Welcome, everyone. I'm so glad that you're here with us today. I know it's a very busy time of year, so thank you so much for taking the time to attend our webinar. My name is Sarah Jane Schonour, and I'll be presenting Read Live Basics. Some of you may be using Read Live, or some of you may be new to Read Live. I have Christy helping me out today, and she's going to drop a link to the free trial into the chat so that if you haven't tried Read Live, you can try it for free. So that's exciting. So let's get started. We are going to talk today about Read Live, which is our platform for 4 different programs. We have Read Naturally Live, Word Warm-Ups Live, 1 Minute Reader Live, and Read Naturally Live Español. And today we will spend most of our time on Read Naturally Live, which is our flagship program, and most people start with that program. So it's a nice entree into the Read Live platform. And so, speaking of the Read Live platform, if you think about Microsoft, and Microsoft has Word and Outlook and Excel and all kinds of different programs built into the Microsoft platform, Read Live is our platform where we have our 4 programs available. And this Read Live platform, we have comprehensive research-based interventions. We have developed them by teachers, for teachers, and Read Naturally has been around for over 30 years. We work with thousands of schools and see great success. And this is differentiated instruction for an RTI model or an MTSS model. It's really individualized for each student. And this cloud-based platform, you can use it anywhere, including for remote learning. So here we go. Here's the concepts that we're talking about today. When we're talking about teaching reading, we know that there are 5 areas of reading: phonemic awareness, phonics, vocabulary, fluency, and comprehension. We'll focus a lot on fluency because Read Naturally Live does provide a lot of instruction and intervention in fluency. We know all of these areas are important. We also know that students are accessing a core reading program that has all 5 of these areas so that they can learn to read. But some students need extra help in phonics or fluency or comprehension. If they need that additional intervention, these are supplemental programs that can work side by side with that core reading instruction that's being provided. So what is fluency? When we're talking about fluency, we're talking about when students read at an appropriate rate for their age, which I'll show you in a little bit. With high levels of accuracy, we want them reading every word on the page correctly, and with proper expression, or some people call it prosody. So we want students to be able to read well, and in order to comprehend, they need to be fluent with their reading. Fluency is really the bridge to comprehension. Many of the researchers tell us that. So speaking of the research, we know that oral reading fluency, reading out loud and practicing that correlates highly with reading comprehension. All of these measures that are on the screen right now are valuable. They're good activities to do, and they have fairly high correlations. But the highest one is for oral reading fluency. So most teachers I know don't have a lot of time. So I often say, let's get the most bang for our buck and let's work on oral reading fluency to not only improve how well students can read automatically, but also to improve that comprehension. Now, the reason this happens is based on some of the research from Dr. J. Samuels, and he put forth the automaticity theory. And let's test out that automaticity theory, being automatic with text, being able to read the words with very little effort. So we're going to practice something called the Stroop effect, or experience it, I should say. And as you can see here, we have color words. And if I ask you on the count of 3 to read these words wherever you are logging in from, ready, 1, 2, 3, go. Okay, so that was pretty easy. Reading color words is automatic for you, and that's great. But if I change the instructions and I say, I would like for you to tell me the color the word is printed in, the color of the font, instead of reading the word, let's see how that goes. Ready? 1, 2, 3, go. Well, that got a little harder, didn't it? So trying to isolate those colors when you see the word, what does your brain want to do? your brain wants to read the word because you're automatic with text. And when we're automatic with text, we can take time to think about what we're reading, and we can make text to text, text to self, text to life connections. And those are things we really want students to do when they're reading, because reading is really not reading unless you're understanding what you're reading. So this is an important thing for us to remember as we're practicing fluency. Now, when you're working with your non-fluent readers, think about what they do, how they sound like. Basically, play a video in your head of working with a non-fluent reader and think about what kinds of things they experience while they're reading. What do they do? How do they act? Most students are reading haltingly slow and laborious if they're having trouble with fluency. Sight words are very difficult for them. Often they take each word and try to sound it out, and they blow past the punctuation and often make many errors. Many times they don't even know they've made an error. They just go right through. And at the end, you say, "What did you read?" I don't know. So they're just trying to get through it. They're not able to do it with confidence. So not all students read this way. Many students are able to read fluently, but we need to listen to our students read and assess them to find out who needs this fluency intervention. And earlier I mentioned the rate that's appropriate for the student's age. These are the curriculum-based norms from Hasbrook and Tyndall. They've done several iterations of these norms. And over on the right, you'll see the grade level. And then here we've just focused on the 50th percentile, because if we can get students reading fluently at the 50th percentile, they are okay for oral reading fluency. So fall words correct per minute, winter words correct per minute, spring words correct per minute. We have the 50th percentile scores here. Let's just zoom in on third grade. So at the beginning of the year in the fall, students reading about 83. There's a range around these numbers, about 83 words correct per minute. Then by the winter and spring, moving up to 97 and 112. So this is great. These are national norms, and we know that kids are moving forward with their fluency as the year goes on. That's the good news. The challenging news is that where our proficient readers are at the 75th percentile in the fall and the spring, we've got 104, 139 here. And then we see our struggling readers at the 25th percentile and even lower, and they're not anywhere close to the students where the proficient readers were in the fall. So we have this huge achievement gap, which means our struggling readers need to make more than a year's progress within an academic year. So they actually need to read more and have accelerated progress. And what do our students that are struggling avoid? They avoid reading. So we have to find a way to make it fun, interesting, and motivating for them. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So if we just say go forth and read, we know from the National Reading Panel report and from our experience that just saying go forth and read is not sufficient. We need to provide some type of structure and scaffolding for our students who are striving to learn how to read. And so as we look at 10 minutes of independent reading, which most of you probably even have more than that during a day, in 10 minutes, a fluent reader might read 2,000 words, and a struggling reader might read only 500 words. Or as I remember in my classroom, I had students that would pick up a book and pretend to read, turning the pages, looking at the pictures. So this is equal practice time, but unequal practice. So for those of you wondering when you can fit in working with Read Naturally Live or our other programs, sometimes teachers have students do Read Naturally Live or 1 Minute Reader Live during silent sustained reading. So that is one option. As we look at what we provide through our programs, there are research proven strategies built into all of our programs. And when we blend them together, we call this the Read Naturally strategy. So teacher modeling is when students have either a teacher reading aloud to them and showing them what it sounds like to read at an appropriate rate with high levels of accuracy and expression, or it could be a buddy reader, or it could be choral reading. It could also be computer assisted or audio assisted. So it's that proficient reader showing the student, this is how you read with fluency. And then repeated reading is reading over and over again. So when we read over and over again, LaBerge and Samuels, some of the premier researchers in repeated reading, they have said, they're going to read faster. That makes sense. They're going to understand what they read better, and they're going to generalize what they learn from one passage to a new passage, which is really exciting. And students start to feel confident. They start to feel like they're readers when they do this repeated reading over and over and practice, because when we practice, we typically get better. And then progress monitoring is like a video game. If we can help the kids see this is your goal, this is what you're striving for, keep practicing until you get there, it reminds them of a video game. In fact, we had a student the other day telling one of our teachers, I'm ready to level up. So feeling like they're really ready to go to the next level or try something more difficult. And this is all part of how we motivate students to read more and practice and get better at reading. So we have students in Read Naturally Live who are reading along with a model, and then they get to practice on their own, and they get to see their scores going up, which is really exciting. And then they get to see a graph of their progress, what they did the first time they read the story and what they did the last time they read the story. We call that the cold and the hot reading. So these strategies are all research-based and really help the students move forward. We know that this works because we have research on it, and this is a summary of a research study done by our founder, Candace Einott, and she worked with special education and Title I students. And for her graduate program, she did a study where she looked at using these strategies with her students. For her special education students, they had an average weekly gain of 2.35 words a week on those cold, unpracticed readings. And she started with her Title I students who had only been making 1.23 words of growth, and they moved up to 2.15. So almost double what they were doing without the intervention. So that's exciting. And then we have other studies, randomized control trials, and these results are on our website if you'd like to learn more about the research. Now, here we have a summary of all 4 of the programs that we're talking about today. So we have Read Naturally Live, Word Warm-Ups Live, 1 Minute Reader Live, and Read Naturally Live Español. So as we transition to each program today, you'll see this slide come back, and it has the purpose, the areas of reading, where phonics comes in, what support is there for English language learners, and what steps require the teacher. Because 1 Minute Reader Live is completely independent, but the other programs need teacher involvement at key steps, and we'll go over that. So let's talk a little bit more about Read Naturally Live. The focus areas are fluency and phonics. So there are phonics series of Read Naturally Live, there are sequence series, and we'll talk about the different curricular areas. The additional support is in vocabulary comprehension and spelling for the phonics levels. So lots packed into this program, and we're excited that so many people are using this program and seeing good success. For the students, we see them building their fluency and motivation by reading short nonfiction passages. The other neat thing about those nonfiction passages is that students learn something new, and they love learning something new and telling the adults something that might surprise them. Did you know this fact? So we are very excited to build that into our passages. These nonfiction passages also link to science and social studies, which helps students in school. Students increase their reading accuracy and expression with that audio support. As I mentioned, this is explicit systematic instruction with built-in scaffolding. And then they strengthen their comprehension and vocabulary. There's a comprehension quiz, there's a retell, there's a prediction, there are keywords that are read to students with their definitions. So lots of focus on the different areas of reading in one program. And then developing automaticity in decoding by reading word lists, and that's in the phonics levels. And they can work independently most of the time. So as I mentioned earlier, this teacher will come in at certain steps to monitor progress and to see how the student is doing. And then the student gets to experience some success, and they see their progress, and they get awards each time they finish a story. So the content in Read Naturally Live for sequenced, it goes from 1.0 to 8.0, typically in half-year increments until we get up to 6.0. Then it jumps from 6.0 to 7.0 to 8.0. Phonics series is 0.8 to 2.7. Idioms 3.0 to 4.5. An idiom series has to do with different expressions in our American culture, like an ace up your sleeve, things like that, that your English learners might benefit from. The appropriate skill level is grades 1 through 8, but this program works from beginning readers all the way through adults. And we hope that teachers are using it 3 to 5 days a week, 30 to 45 minutes per session. And when students get used to the program, depending on what level they're in, they can finish a story in 1 or 2 sessions. So that's great. A lot of students can finish 2 or 3 stories a week, which is fantastic. You'll see that there's a steps poster in your handout. And so we have all the steps that go through and teach the student about vocabulary, fluency, and comprehension. Students get to choose their story, which is very unique and special because they like to choose. And then keywords is the vocabulary piece. Prediction has to do with comprehension. Cold timing is when they practice to get that cold score. Read along is the read along is the teacher modeling. Repeated practice, the quiz step, and then a retell or a word list, depending on which series they're in. And then the pass step. So we're going to go through the screens, what the screens look like on each step of Read Naturally Live. As I mentioned, students get to choose their story. So this student has already passed 3 stories, so they have a star for each of those, and they can pick them in any order. There are 24 stories per level, so right now this student is on the first set, and after they finish 12, they can move on to the next set, or the teacher can adjust their level if they see that progress that they're expecting. So a student has a level and a goal, and they have lots of opportunities to have choice in this process. The other choices the teacher has through the teacher menu is to change story options for a student. At the beginning, I mentioned that this is a very individualized program. So for this particular student, Anna, anywhere that you see a green check, those check marks can be disabled. So for right now, she does not have a Spanish read along. This is not a student that needs to preview the story in Spanish. So that step is turned off. Any of the steps can be turned off. We recommend leaving on the teacher required for the cold timing and the quiz step because we have something working in the background called Data Mentor that will make recommendations or suggestions about changes for the student to keep them challenged. So those steps are required for Data Mentor to be active in the background. So all of these steps can be turned on or off. Some of them have a time limit, which can be adjusted. Some of them have the number of required times that you complete that step. So for instance, the read along, you can require 1, 2, 3, 4. You can require several read alongs, and you can adjust the speed. It can be expressive. It can be the baseline speed, a medium speed. There are 3 speeds that you can do. So all of these adjustments help us individualize for the student. And then as we look at this next step, we see that we have the key words. So each word is clicked on, and there's an audio that says the word, and then a sentence, and then sometimes a picture. So that's super helpful for our students that need to learn these words. Again, these are things that good readers do. Good readers, think about the keywords, make a prediction before they start reading. So these are things we want to encourage our students to do. And the prediction step, we have the title, the picture, the keywords. Some teachers require that students use some of the keywords in the actual prediction. You don't have to do that. You can also make accommodations here. If you have students that are not able to keyboard and type in this box, maybe they can tell you their prediction. Maybe they can write it down in a journal. Maybe they can record it. So whatever's written in this box will be remembered by the program for your reports. But if you need to adjust this step, you certainly can. And then they click next after they've done their prediction. And while they're waiting for the teacher, so this red bar means they're waiting for the teacher, they can play this game called Wordtastic. And so they're not wasting any time. They're practicing vocabulary while they're waiting. When the teacher comes over to conduct the cold timing and to log in, we see that the teacher is present here and we have a start timing button. So while the cold timing is going on, the teacher needs to coach the student to click on any words that are difficult so that the program knows which errors the student made, and you see the cold timing score here. Then we see a graph of the cold timing score with the aim line, like where do we want the student to be by the end of this story. So right now the student is at 76 words correct per minute and their goal is 120. So they're going to read along and practice until they can hit that goal. So this is an opportunity for the student to work independently again. They start the read along and the narrator reads along with them. You should prompt your students to be reading out loud and tracking as they're reading so that they are learning the words in the story. And again, I mentioned you can adjust the required read-alongs. By default, it's 3 read-alongs, but you can make an adjustment as you need to. If they click on one of the blue words before they start reading for the read-along, for the timed reading, or not the timed reading, the read-along itself, they can get the definition and a picture, usually a picture, not always, and they can hear what that word means. And then for the practice, again, they're trying to reach their goal here. So this student's goal was 120. So they've done 3 practices and hit 123. Sometimes there are 2 pages, so you do need to remind your students that they can adjust the pages here. And the students are reading alone to practice the story and increase their fluency. Again, reading is not reading without comprehension. So we have a quiz with a bunch of questions. Some of them are multiple choice, some of them are fill in the blank. And so when the students work on the quiz, the teacher can get an idea of how well they're doing with their comprehension. And then the retell helps the student summarize the story. Again, any accommodations for keyboarding or writing that you need to make, you can make those accommodations for your students. And then the pass step, notice this turns red again. We're waiting for the teacher. The student can practice reading the story while they wait. And then when the teacher comes to conduct the pass timing, whenever you see a plus or minus here, that means during the reading, the teacher is keeping track of the number of missed words. So after the 1 minute timing, the teacher enters the errors and the timing score is listed here. There's an expression score for prosody. So 4 is excellent, 1 is robot reading, I call it. And so as we look at the expression, the student scored a 3, which is acceptable. And here we see the exciting news that they reached their goal for their hot timing. Kids love this graph. All right. And so then we can go back and have this teacher evaluate any open-ended questions or anything about the retell so the teacher can say whether this is acceptable or not. And then this student met all the criteria, but if they didn't, they could go back and redo any steps that were difficult for them. This is a great time to celebrate with the student all the things that they did well and give them a little mini lesson or a couple of pointers if there's some things that are difficult for them. Here's the congratulations screen. I talked about getting rewarded for your hard work. So anything they do on the first try, they get the full badge with the ribbons. And when they do pretty well, then they get their regular badge. So pretty exciting time for the students to see that they are becoming readers. So that's in a nutshell what Read Naturally Live entails. And now I'll move into Word Warm-Ups Live. Word Warm-Ups Live is our program that focuses on phonics, but there's also support for fluency, spelling, and phonemic awareness. And the reason students participate in this is if they need to improve their word recognition, if they need to use word patterns to decode rapidly, if they need to learn harder words and practice their difficult phonetically regular words, if they need to practice not only reading the words in isolation, but in connected text, and then reinforcing featured phonics skills by encoding, doing the spelling activity. There are 3 levels of word warm-ups live. There's level 1 with one-syllable words that cover first and second grade phonics skills, and then level 2, two-syllable words. You can see here some of the different types that are included here. And then level 3, multisyllabic words. Again, we have an idea of what we're working on for level 3. So students of different ages can participate in Word Warm-Ups Live if they have a phonics need. There is a phonics assessment. And so before enrolling a student in Word Warm-Ups Live, you can give the phonics assessment to see which level would be appropriate for that student. The skill level is grades 1 through 4 for phonics. And again, this can be used with beginning readers all the way to adults. And if you're using it in tier 1, a lot of teachers that we know use it for their entire first grade classroom, and they do it as a 10-minute daily warm-up. But some teachers use it for students who are receiving services in tier 2 and tier 3 that need more targeted or individualized instruction. And so for that intervention, it's 20 to 30 minutes daily. You have in your handout the Word Warm-Ups Live steps that goes through all of the steps, the introduction, the look, listen. Well, they get to choose an exercise, which was great. And then look, listen, and respond, decode and read along, practicing the word lists and spelling, the past step. And then there, for level 3, there are flashcards. Those are the word list exercises. And then for the story exercises, it's read along, practice the story, quick quiz. Is this sounding familiar? If students know how to use Read Naturally Live, it's an easy transition into Word Warm-Ups Live. They pass the story and then they can play the Fantastic game as a waiting game as well to work on phonics skills and phonemic awareness skills. So that's a little bit about Word Warm-Ups Live. Now we'll talk about 1 Minute Reader Live, which is our independent program. And this is a really flexible program. So the main focus is fluency, but vocabulary and comprehension are also supported. And with 1 Minute Reader Live, students can be self-directed. Again, a lot of choice is built in because there are many levels to choose from. They can expand their knowledge base because all of the stories are nonfiction. They can benefit from that audio support to learn how to read with expression. And fluency and comprehension and vocabulary activities are built in. They experience success and they get points for what they do in the program, which is very motivating. And then they also gain confidence from seeing their success on the graphs. So if you have time where you need students to be occupied and you're assessing students, for instance, or you have a few minutes before the next activity, they can hop into 1 Minute Reader Live and read independently, which is very nice. There are 6 levels, E through 5th, so early reader through mid-5th grade. There are 8 books per level and 5 nonfiction stories per book. So lots of choice built in. You can turn on and off certain levels. So if you have a 4th grader and you want them, working in level 3 and 4, you can set that up in the teacher module. The skill level is 1 through 5, but again, beginning reader to adult. We have a wide range of people for whom this would be appropriate. So if somebody needs structured independent reading, this is the program for them. If a student's in Read Naturally Live and they've been working on a story and they still have a few minutes left and they don't want to start a new story and Read Naturally Live, they can toggle over to 1 Minute Reader Live. So for some variety, they can go back and forth. If students are about to exit out of the Read Naturally Live intervention and they are ready for more independence, they can spend more time in 1 Minute Reader Live. And if they're waiting to be placed in Read Naturally Live at the beginning of the year, often teachers are doing a lot of assessments. And if they are waiting, they can do 1 Minute Reader Live independently. So as I mentioned, it's very structured. It can also be accessed at home. All of these programs can. So for homework, you can have students working in 1 Minute Reader Live. Over the summer or any break that the student has, they can access the program at home. So these are the levels that are included. So it kind of gives you an overview of what you see in each level. Most of them are the middle of the grade level. So if you see 5th grade, that means it's a mid-5th grade level. And they go from easier to more complex. some people ask us, what's the difference between Read Naturally Live and 1 Minute Reader Live? Read Naturally Live is the intervention. That's where the explicit systematic instruction happens. But if you want students to follow up that explicit systematic instruction with additional practice, then 1 Minute Reader Live is a great way to back up that instruction. And then the reading levels go from 1.0 to 8.0 in Read Naturally Live, whereas 1 Minute Reader Live goes to the mid 5th grade level. And then students work mostly independently in Read Naturally Live and completely independently in 1 Minute Reader Live. And we do have reports in both programs. So you can follow the students' progress and you can share that progress with students and with their families. And we have our steps poster for you in the handout as well. So you and your students can stay on track and make sure that the students are following the steps and benefiting from the program. The last program that we'll talk about today is Read Naturally Live Español. And Read Naturally Live Español is Read Naturally Live translated into Spanish. So this is a great way for your English learners to practice reading in their native language before they're reading in English. You can turn on an English read-along option, and then students, as they progress, can move from Read Naturally Live Español into Read Naturally Live in English. And so we have a focus on fluency with support for vocabulary and comprehension. And students build fluency in Spanish by reading these passages. And we know that helps students to then transfer into reading in English. And then accuracy and expression is important as well. And then they strengthen comprehension and vocabulary in Spanish. And they're working independently most of the time. And again, this is a time for them to celebrate that they're becoming readers. And again, these stories are translated into Spanish, and we can see the screen and see that all the directions are in Spanish. Everything, the audio directions, everything is in Spanish. Now, for teachers, the reports are in English. And so that's helpful for if you're a teacher that doesn't speak Spanish, you can see the reports in English. And then there are 10 levels, 1.0 to 5.6, and all content and directions are in Spanish. English instructions can be accessed and turned on, and the teachers interact with students using an English teacher menu, and that past review screen can be reviewed in English or Spanish. We do have some schools that are using Spanish immersion, and they do use this program in those immersion programs as well. Skill level is 1 to 5. Beginning readers to adults can use this program. And again, it's for native Spanish speakers to support their Spanish reading, also to build vocabulary. And if you want to learn Spanish, then this is a program where you can practice Spanish, reading Spanish text. It's 30 to 45 minutes per session, 3 to 5 sessions per week, just like Read Naturally Live. And so the differences mainly have to do with what the student's English language proficiency is. So Read Naturally Live would be for students who are able to understand and read English, and for students who are learning English, Read Naturally Live Español helps build their native Spanish background so that they can translate those skills. And then the different levels are listed here. There are more levels of Read Naturally Live than there are for Español, but we hope to add some more. And for the steps, we have the same steps with those optional either Spanish or English read-alongs. So if the student wants to preview the story in a different language, they can do that. And then the reports are there for the teacher to monitor progress, and you can see the reports in English if you need that. And we have our poster translated into Spanish. And then these are the programs. So we've really gone through all 4 programs, and we have other upcoming webinars. So take a look if you want a deeper dive in any of these programs. Check out our list of webinars. And if you have any questions, just make sure you call us, email us, go to our website. On our website, we have a help page and we have a user guide. So Christy is going to put those in the chat for those of you who would like to visit those pages and learn more. And If there's anything we can do to support you, we will be happy to do so. So thank you again for joining us today, and we really appreciate all the hard work you do with your students, and we wish you a great school year.